Welcome to the Wade Borth Podcast, where fresh thinking meets financial freedom. Each week, we explore ideas that challenge old habits and light the way to a stronger financial future. Let's get started. Hello, welcome back to the Wade Borth Podcast. Today, I have a great friend of mine, a guy that's super fun to be around, a guy that lives life to its fullest and is full of abundance, Mr. Joe Fuller. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you, Wade. It is a pleasure. And right back at you. You know, that's one of the reasons I love this community so much is I do love to live life. But it seems like every agent, every coach that we work with has the same passion, same purpose. So it's a wonderful community to be around.
I would agree. I know Factum that's one of the things it talks about is a sense of community. And it is truly, when you have a sense of community around you, everything becomes just a little bit easier. It doesn't make it easier, just a little bit easier. So all the trials and tribulations we can share, but also the successes. And you've had quite a few in your what I'd call your short life insurance career. So congratulations on the hard work and the rewards you've seen for that. So
yeah, thank you so much. It's been an honor to work with some of these families locally and abroad in the United States. You know, this and I don't know if this is a spoiler alert for the rest of the podcast, but we're going to be talking a little bit about family banking today. And that's a conversation that goes a lot deeper than really any of the typical traditional financial conversations. And so it's been a huge impact for our lives, but also the lives of our clients. And so how can you not get excited about building something that's worth leaving to your kids, to their kids, to build that unity around it? So yeah, it's awesome when you're having fun doing it.
Yeah, that's going to be the point of the conversation. Yeah, it's going to be just the family banking conversation because I think there's so much value in there. And I know it's a passion of yours. But let's start first with, now I know you're an old man, like you're probably older than I am. Well, in spirit maybe, but no, I'm just kidding. But let's start with like your journey. And again, some people might look at this, but it's interesting how journeys don't have to be over a long period of time. They can be very short period of times and take you a completely different spot than you ever thought you would be. And I know you and I were out pheasant hunting one time down in South Dakota. We have a chance to spend a couple of days together. That was fabulous, by the way. And so when you shared your story with me, I'm like, I need to capture those conversations because there's value in kind of where, what you shared with my son, which was huge. I appreciated that. And then also kind of what you thought you were going to be doing to what you're doing at a ripe old age of 20.
I'll be 25 tomorrow, so.
25 tomorrow. Happy birthday. So as this airs, happy birthday, Joe. I appreciate that.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's a pleasure to be on.
So maybe just share with me kind of what was going on in your life, what happened, why the change from what you thought you would be doing to what you're currently doing, and how is it better, how's it worse?
Yeah, love it. So it all started when I was born.
Usually starts that place. That's usually the place it starts.
Usually it's where we start off. No, so I was probably about 11 years old the first time that I realized that like purpose and passion are a real thing that we're all born with. And for me, it was a journey of, I had a great buddy of mine, his name was Carter. His dad was a neurosurgeon. So I didn't fully know what that meant, but I knew that he worked on people's brains, their spinal cords, and I thought that was the most fascinating thing. And so literally from that point at age 11, I was like, I need to start making sure that I'm doing all the right things so that I can become that one day. And so for like whatever reason, that just spoke to my soul. And so I've loved the medical fields for as long as I can remember. And so throughout high school, I worked really hard, took harder classes to make sure I can get at least some college credits in high school. Became a medical assistant right out of high school through a program here in Arizona called GVIT. And through that, I got to meet some wonderful, wonderful people. And then I started to realize that most individuals, and this kind of speaks to everywhere, don't understand how money flows through their hands, and especially not as a family. And so I realized very few families were having the deep, intentional conversations around money. And so I was about 17 when all of this realization, these pieces, right, I was starting to get into the workforce. And that was about the same time that my brother Kyle had looked into infinite banking. He'd been studying money for years at this point, and he got introduced to a very wealthy orthodontist who made actually most of his wealth through infinite banking, through becoming the bank in his life, his practice, his family, to capture the dollars that were leaving his life. And so Kyle came to us and he presented this idea. And granted, this is like, when you first hear the concept, you don't fully know how to talk to people about it. It's a little bit tricky because it's so different from the way that people think.
Yeah.
And so it took us probably 3 or 4 sit downs, and he's a strong leader in our family. And so he started to tell us about this idea that what if we could keep every dollar in our family for generations? And like, I just got chills saying that. And I got chills way back then too, because I started, like, my mindset shifted. I said, what do you mean? What does that really mean? Like, if I can keep every dollar in my control and in my kids' control and my kids' kids, what conversations do we need to start having?
Yeah.
Right? So I started thinking a little bit differently at about age 17. So then I spent about 1.5 years working in and out of several different medical facilities, getting to learn more about some doctors, some different nurses, other medical assistants. And in that process, I realized, right, most of them didn't have that good of a grasp on how money flows through their hands. And because of that, they always consistently seem to have kind of a bad attitude. And like, I'm naturally a very happy person, but like that atmosphere started to bring me down a bit. And I'm like, I have to kind of get away from that. So I ended up serving a mission for my church. I was gone for about 2 years out of the workforce, did some humanitarian work. It was a lot of fun.
Up in my neck of the woods.
Yes, I was up in North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, a little bit of Montana, and then eventually over to Ukraine. So kind of a whole shebang during COVID. But in that, that theme of, more families need to have unity around money kept appearing. Like, if they're centered on God as a family, sorry, you can't actually see my thumb, but my thumb's up. They're centered around God. If they've got great morals and principles and they understand how money flows through them, those 3 things help them to develop what we would say is a strong, tight-knit community inside their own family. And that spreads to the whole community as well. But I started to see just the power in these simple conversations to help us change how we do things. And so when I got off my mission, I'd asked Kyle a couple different things, a couple pieces of advice while I was out. And he just said, hey, when you get back, I'm going to have you read a couple books. It was Becoming Your Own Banker by Nelson Nash. It was The Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and The Richest Man in Babylon. And throughout those 3 books, I learned the the power of leverage.
Very much.
And I started to realize that some of the wealthiest families in the entire world have leveraged tools to help them keep and maintain their dollars in their families for generations. Part of it's real estate, part of it's life insurance, part of it is some of the businesses that they run. And so then I started thinking, isn't this exactly what Kyle was telling me to do? And so I realized, okay, there's probably different things that we can do in the world. Like, each of us has a purpose and a passion that is unique to us. And so in that journey of learning about money, learning about how businesses worked, I started to have these little epiphanies. And then one night I was praying and the idea came to me because I was still conflicted about becoming a doctor. Like, I've always wanted to do that. And the idea came to me that if I build wealth and I do it in the best possible way, I could actually build hospitals around the world and work with doctors to go save lives in other countries.
So,
and in that moment, that was like the crystalline, okay, this is a purpose and passion that's so much bigger than me. I get to do amazing things, but I have to learn how money works, and I have to be able to teach people how to do that.
yeah.
So, you do have a question for me?
Oh man! So thank you so much for that story. That's so I kind of jokingly say that you're seasoned a little bit older than I am, and I would say not so much in years, but just in wisdom. How many people are in their mid-50s hadn't thought of that, right? So how many people do we run into on a regular basis that hadn't thought the way you thought? So thank you for that. And so I guess my point being is like never too early, it's never too late to rethink your thinking, I think is the term I would use. And so beyond that, and the one thing that you shared with me that was really interesting is like, I think I asked you a question, why did you want to be a doctor? And I think the answer you told me, if I recall, was, I wanted to change people's lives. I wanted to help people. And not necessarily even here in the United States, it was around the world.
Yep.
And you came to the realization that there's more than just one way to do that. Once you sat back and meditated about how does that become the reality without me becoming a doctor.
Right.
So that's powerful. That's a conversation that I don't know that we have very often, but we should with ourselves. Like, why am I doing what am I doing, and how is it serving me, not just short term, but really long term? Because I think a lot of people kind of get caught up in the short term, like, I got to put a paycheck on the table. I'm going to grab the first thing that comes along the way, and there's very little purpose and thought around that pathway that you're taking.
And I think that was really one of the conversations that solidified why Factum for me. There's a lot of great agencies in the world, in the United States, that do what we do, but it was that purpose and passion behind, what is truly the life that you want to live, right? And doing that exercise. So Kyle had me go. I had to go camping to fully complete this, right? To be out in the woods, and I spent about 6 hours just thinking, what does life look like for Joe? Who am I? What have I always felt to be true? How can I live into those? And so throughout that, it became very apparent that there's some good work, there's some good books, good study. Like, you're never not learning, but having that exercise behind me to realize, this is the guiding compass to why we do all that we do, is to live the most fulfilling life that we can. Like, that idea to me is worth more than gold, right? Because I know who I am, what I want to do, then it becomes very, very easy to say no to a lot of things that aren't aligned with my purpose. And then it's like, great, I don't care about any of those things because they're nowhere in my vision at all.
Right. That's a really good, you make a couple of really good points there. One is, how many people, I'll speak for myself, I find a lot more enjoyment in my life and purpose when I figured out that I could say no to some things. So saying no is a powerful tool. And I don't think we exercise that tool, that ability, often enough. And not no because I'm selfish, it's no because it doesn't align with my purpose.
Right.
And then so going back to now, we use this conversation around the 5 areas of life, abundance, the 5 areas. I imagine that's the exercise that he was having you do.
Yeah.
In that iteration. But it's something that we lead with in all our conversation, all our seminars, is that we truly believe that abundance in all 5 areas of life is really the definition of happiness in our lives, right? Is fulfillment. And so I applaud you, the fact that you took that much time and purposeful time to do that. Because I don't know, because you were 18 at the time? 19?
For which time?
When you went out to the woods and did your 5 areas conversation.
I was 21.
21? Okay.
Yeah.
So how many 21-year-olds feel lost in their life, right?
Right.
And this gave you the purpose that you were looking for. Well, but you already knew. You already knew the purpose. You just wasn't sure. You just weren't sure how that created a picture of your life and how to get there.
And I think that's the exact piece, Wade, is like, one, I do like to imagine things, and like my creativity, like, it's exciting. It's fun to think about the different things you can do in life. And especially with social media, like, I've never been a huge fan of having a social media presence, but I always appreciated people going after their dreams, right? People that quit their full-time jobs to become influencers, for a lack of a better term, or personal finance coaches, personal fitness, like, they switched their 9 to 5 jobs so that they can be closer to their family, closer to their money, and closer to the ideal person they want to become anyway. And it was really cool to see that shift in social media and the last several years since COVID, of more and more families being open to this idea that there isn't just one way to succeed in life. It's totally up to you. Like, you get to choose and create that path. And I've always been one that I don't always love to interact with everyone, but I like to watch everyone. And so, like, being one of 11 kids, it was really easy to watch. Hey, I've got 6 older siblings that do good things, bad things, a little bit in the middle, right? And so I got to see very early on just the power of watching. right? What things help us succeed? What things might take us off the right paths? And it was because I was able to just sit back and watch a lot of times that I had those realizations pretty early on, and I continue to do so now, right? You get to see business owners that have hundreds of thousands of dollars flow through their hands, and yet they're hard-pressed to save $10,000. And then you see families that are making $100,000 that they're like, yeah, we save $20,000 or $30,000 every single year. No problem. And it blows my mind because there's such a huge discrepancy, but it's those foundational principles that are synonymous between every wealthy person. There's rich and then there's wealthy, right? But those foundational principles, what we do on a day-by-day basis that creates that unshakable foundation for us as a family, that we're going to have the best, like when you can put your head down and know that you're safe on your liquidity, you're safe on where your access to cash is, and you know that your family's protected, like that puts a lot of peace of mind on a lot of people's shoulders, but not everyone gets to feel that.
Yeah. That's a really good point. Is I would say everybody is entitled to feel that, but not everybody's willing to do what it takes to get there, right? Because I know this to be true, as well as you. Is like we talk to a lot of people, high incomes, average middle incomes. It doesn't really matter. It's not the income that can tell you, do people have these really tough money habits, right? It's habits that make it happen. It's not income, and everybody wants to relay it back. Wants to take it back to income. I'll talk to your doctors. You were watching doctors that were making $500,000, $1 million a year. That has much financial pressure as the shift nurse that was working in their ER room or whatever it might be.
Right. And like that energy translates between individuals, right? When there's stress on both sides of that and everyone's feeling that pressure, it puts a burden on our souls, on us as individuals.
Yeah.
And then that translates into how we show up at work. And that was one of those, again, crystalline moments for me of seeing it time and time and time again, that I realized I need to get so good at my craft to help have these conversations with doctors, with nurses, so that like that can become an industry that is abundant, fulfilling. And there's other problems that arise in those, right? There's red tape that they have to go through, and I don't discredit that by any mean. But if they can get dialed in financially, that really does alleviate so much of that consistent pressure that they feel throughout their entire working career. And like, it really comes back to the idea of retirement, right? Most people don't love what they do or love the circumstances they're in because it's usually self-created. But so then they're looking for retirement, right? They're thinking, how can I get out of this as soon as possible so I no longer feel this financial pressure?
Right.
Like, that's not a fun way to live. But when you love what you do and you know how it's helping you succeed, then it's so easy to keep doing it, to keep getting better at it, to keep having more and more fun. And like, that's why eventually, right, building hospitals, taking doctors to foreign countries, like, is part of my vision and goal, because I want to have them do those experiences with cultures and people that are so abundant. They have so much less, right? But they're so willing to give. They're so willing to be there and to serve others and to just be present and to know. And so like having those experiences, that's part of what my mission taught me as well, is like everyone has a unique story, a unique perspective on life. And if you never get to hear it, you never realize, okay, we're actually super blessed, right? And it gives you that perspective to look out and say, okay, I can make changes, and two, things aren't always as bad as they seem.
Yeah. And the beautiful part about what we do here at Factum and just in the industry in general is bring that level of abundance, right? We can have that impact. And that's probably the part of the business that I find the fulfillment, right? It's like, I know what God's purpose is for me, and it's like me out fulfilling that purpose. And when I start seeing that and it comes together, man, that's exciting, right? So that allows us the ability to, again, you talked about there's red tape, there's pressures all the way around us. But when you don't have the financial pressure and you have a purpose, all of it becomes, there's no noise there.
Right.
And I was thinking about this. I was talking with our IT guy yesterday about noise, right? I said, remember, I played football. He was a wrestler. I said, when you're on that mat and the whistle sounds and you're wrestling, all the noise goes away because you're within your purpose, right? It's like the noise is gone. You're just within yourself and you don't hear anything else. And I think about that. I said, in football is the same way. It's like when you're doing your thing and like you're in your groove, all the noise goes away. Right. And think about that from our business standpoint. If I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing and I'm enjoying it as much as I could possibly enjoy it, and I have abundance in all areas of my life, all the things that are distractions, I just don't hear. Right. While we go through it. So we eliminate that noise. Where we bring in noise is when we get outside of our purpose, right? We get outside of those 5 areas and we go, oh, I want to put money in this. I want to be doing this. And it's like, man, it causes me to get a lot of deep breath sighs. And like, I don't know if that's good. And so it kind of tells you instantly that that's probably not for us, right? So I always tell there's no right or wrong. And there's always this like, where do you need to be headed? And that's really what that conversation's about, which actually leads into this passion I know you have about family banking. You mentioned it earlier, this idea of, okay, what is family banking? What is family banking to Joe Fuller? And how do you see, can everybody plug into what you're going to be talking about? So maybe just give me a description of what family banking, you give us a little bit of idea what it meant, but maybe go a little bit deeper into it.
Yeah, so really it's the habits around money that are going to help a family succeed the most. And in the simplest form, that's exactly what it is. Now, there are tools and aspects that we utilize to make sure that it's perpetuated generationally. Mm-hmm. But really, it's having a good, better, best conversation. Right? There's good places to start. There's better habits to develop. And then there's the best place of all time, forever, which is whole life insurance. I'm just kidding. It is one of the coolest assets ever once you get into it. But really, it's that idea, right, that every dollar that flows through our family's hands. Now, again, I'm a family of 11, so like with in-laws now, with nieces, nephews, there's 30-something of us, probably 32, I think, at this point. So we're a big old family. And once we started having the conversations of who finances these deals for us in the family, and what if all of those dollars consistently returned back to the family's portfolio, if you will? Mm-hmm. That idea alone was enough to spark, not all, but most of our siblings to sit down and have better conversations. Right? Develop the leadership inside the family to bring us closer together. Now,
which is really kind of funny because most people talk about never lend money or never have financial interactions with your family,
and it's because they've been burned, right? We make sure we have contracts in place that say if you default on payments, if you're being a knucklehead, because the family bank, right, owns that asset technically, we can and will pull that. But there's some grace that has, and like before we ever do anything like that, we'll have conversations. We'll sit down with siblings, the individuals that we're loaning to, and hey, what's going on in your life? Because if there are huge financial changes or hardships in their lives, yeah, we can be graceful with them, right? We can give them that second chance, that third chance, but they can't abuse that system, right? And so it gives us all the control rather than if you miss a payment with the bank, they're coming right after that asset. Nope, it's ours now. You missed it. We're adding interest on, we're tacking it, or we're just going to take that asset entirely. Right? We have that same capability, but it gives us that chance to have better conversations in the meantime. And along that note, right, because we're using whole life insurance as our primary savings tool, that means every dollar that we save is multiplied sometimes 3 to 5 times in the amount of death benefit that's being produced as well. So now every dollar is worth 3 to 5 times more for those that come after us. And that becomes very, very, very substantial when you're a family of our size.
Yeah.
Right. There's.
I did have to laugh when I saw the Fuller Family Bank presentation you and Kyle did. You're jealous if you have a small family. So.
Right. and that's part of the beauty, right? Is each of our siblings does something unique. Like me and Kyle are the only ones that are like super serious about this exact conversation. And we're alike in a lot of ways. And so it does help to have those similarities of wanting to serve people. But our other siblings understand the conversation as well. They just have their careers that they love as well.
Yep.
And so, like, it doesn't have to be everyone doing the
It
same.
doesn't have to be one or the other. I think that's the real key, is that most people always see this as always a binary choice. And I believe Nelson Nash, in his book back up here, Becoming Your Own Banker, he talked about that. He says, you're in two businesses. Whatever you do from a day-to-day living in the banking business. Yeah. Now, it took me a long time to really appreciate what he was saying there, right? But you guys are really doing a good job of encapsulating that from a family perspective.
It's taking time. It's not an overnight process. We're a decade into this conversation. And again, like, I was 17 when that first clicked for me. So parents that are listening to this, young adults, this paradigm shift is worth multiple millions for your family, but you have to take it seriously. So for a little bit, go all in on what does infinite banking actually mean? Because until you do that, you won't have that heart-wrenching, oh my gosh. If you're in your 50s and you're just now learning about this, that was 30 years of compounding that I just missed on every dollar that's ever flown through my hands. If you're 17, 18...
But great, because they're hearing it, so that it's never too late to start.
Now is the next best time to do it, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so if you're in your mid-teens to early 20s, the best place you can possibly start is just start saving money and then talk with Wade or someone on our team, right? That conversation it's one of those keys to just say no to a lot more things, right? There's a lot of noise and I'd say nonsense that goes on in the marketplace, in the world. And if we can get more crystalline, more clear on what actually produces results for us as in our lives, most people wouldn't want to retire. They would want to keep moving money, right? And that's the system and process that we've developed as a family now, that in turn, by where we save money, where we lend money from, which is our whole life policy, is also simultaneously planning for a multi-million-dollar transfer between each of the Fuller kids and their in-laws. So like they're technically other names now, but like that's what the Fuller Bank means, right? This idea that every dollar gets to stay with our family and get perpetuated for generations. Now that changes the conversation to, hey, do whatever you want to do as your career, your occupation, but you will participate in banking, and we're going to teach you how. Because this is 100% going to be a multi-million-dollar transfer, we need to teach you how to make all the right choices as soon as possible.
Boy, a lot of good things to unpack there. One thing I'll just bring back to the listeners is this idea of interdependence. Now, again, you and Kyle did a great presentation on this. If people want to hear that or see that presentation, how can they reach out to you and get that information?
Should I share my info? Is that easy?
Share your info, yes.
Okay. You can shoot me an email at Joe, at Factum Financial. It's FACTUM.com or factumfinancial.com. And so that's usually the easiest way to get those access.
And in the subject line, just put family banking video, because
yeah,
this idea of interdependence, a couple of things behind it, because and it's probably too deep for this one podcast to talk about, but what I want to get across is this idea of, oh, I want to retire because I have a friend that's an electrician. His body, he said, I just can't take it anymore. I mean, it's like I kind of wore out from it. But this idea of like, oh, what if you could blend money to those that need it? Now you don't have to have you don't have to have a body to break down in order to do that. As long as your mind is there, you can say, I can still do that. And when it starts generating you passive income, because now interest is flowing to you, now this idea of retirement is right. You might retire from your 9-to-5 job, but you're never going to retire from banking, because that's truly the most passive, I wouldn't say easiest, because it takes time and energy and thoughtfulness in order to set up and have these cash reserves to be able to do it. But once you have it flowing, then it's quite frankly the easiest game in the world.
Right.
As long as you follow the rules, right? It's very, very clear. You have to follow certain rules, and you'll help them set up those rules in their family banking. But think about this from if I'm 60 years old and I got 5, 6 kids or 2 or 3 kids, whatever, and they got grandkids. Everybody needs financing, and they can come to you, and they're going to pay interest to somebody. Instead of paying it to Wells Fargo, why not pay it to grandma and grandpa? Now that's another retirement income that they have. Just a thought process. That's one thing about interdependence.
Oh, and it's one of those ideas, right, that, it, again, it gives me the chills to think about, right? Is every dollar gets to be multiplied in a system that gets better for you every single year, and you get to be the one that controls those to make the deals. And one of my favorite parts of this whole conversation is the realization that individuals have, and I'll share my own experience with that, is when Kyle first brought up the idea of me, like, hey, do you want to finance a vehicle through my system? At first I was like, okay, I don't really fully understand what that means, right? How would I go about that? He's like, well, you'll pay 7 to 10% interest depending on our conversation, your understanding of things. And then he's like, okay, but then you go read Nelson's book again, Becoming Your Own Banker. I was like, okay. So I read it, and then we had another conversation, and he's like, are you ready to do this? Well, maybe. So then I had to go reread it. So I ended up reading it about 3 times before I fully understood why I would want to pay our family bank more interest than what a traditional financing company would charge. And when I had the realization that those dollars are also creating more dollars for our family for future generations and solving that need now, I was like blown away, because I didn't realize at that time, right, I know that now, that those dollars are doing so many things for us all the time. And that money works so hard for our family now that it puts that pressure off of our shoulders to keep producing. Not that we ever will stop this, because it's awesome. But now, because those dollars do so much for us, it just clears up all those no's that we have to say, right? And now it's great. Yes to this, yes to that. This deal doesn't make sense. Our policies grow faster than that. I'm okay.
And I think that's where that ability to start dreaming a little bit bigger, because now what do you have? You have freedom of money, which generates freedom of time. And so your relationship, and now you have freedom of purpose, which is, hey, now I have that ability to say, let's get our doctors that are all kind of like thinking the same way, that are on the same page. Let's go to some areas that are maybe underdeveloped, or some place you have a passion for, wherever that is. And now you can go, hey, let's go down and build some hospitals, or let's go down and staff some hospitals for a short period of time, and bring the abundance that we have in this fabulous country that we have, and take it to other places. Because that's true stewardship of our purpose.
Right, absolutely. And it's that, really the idea of becoming, right? Becoming your own banker is a process, but also becoming who you were meant to be is also a process. Now, they do absolutely go hand in hand, because we have to know how God's given resources flow through our hands, and the best way to be a steward over those. But it's the same with our gifts and our talents, right? Who we are, what gifts that we've been given have to be developed, or we'll lose them. And so if we're not actively a great steward of those resources, it's going to go to someone else's hands. We just better make sure that it's our family's hands, or someone else in the family that knows this conversation better, right?
Yeah, there's anybody that's listened to my podcast, anybody that talks to me, has heard me say this. You have to love yourself and your family more than you love Wells Fargo. Because, quite honestly, this is exactly what they do. Now, they do it at a much bigger scale and a lot more predatory, I would say. But in all reality, it's just a flow of money. If you understand how the flow of money works, and who's going to pay interest and who's going to earn interest, and what side of the equation you need to be on, I think it's pretty straightforward and it's easy. And I think about this from the standpoint of, why doesn't everybody do this? Why doesn't everybody do this if it's so great?
Right.
And I think, there's a lot of things in life that, if it's so great, why doesn't everybody do it? It's probably because they've never even thought about it from your standpoint. What if you hadn't sat down and spent some time just thinking about where you want to have your abundance in your life? Where do you want it to be? Where do you want it to go?
Right.
So part of it is they haven't thought about it. They haven't found the right education. And they don't, quite frankly, I think probably some of the biggest issues, they don't see the immediate value. And I'm gonna make a point that most people in our industry would disagree with. Like, there isn't, I really think this is a long-term It is a long-term thought process. It is not an immediate thought process. And so there's so many people that can't imagine not having all their money immediately, because again, we have to save, we have to build up dollars, just like a bank, right? If I'm Wells Fargo, I don't one day open up the doors and say, okay, let's lend money. I got to spend a tremendous amount of money to make that happen. But they're thinking long term. Corporations think forever, right? They're thinking to infinity, right? That's kind of where Nelson comes with that idea.
Absolutely. And on that point, Wade, right, is this isn't a conversation that, if it's like the family business and the second kids don't want this, they sell it to someone else, right? This is habits that have to be there for these generational habits to play the test of time, right? All we're doing is we're giving the stewardship to the next generation, that mantle, that crown to the next generation to say, you're the next round of leaders in this conversation. I better have prepared you well, or it's going to be kind of a disaster, because that's a lot of money that's coming to your guys' hands.
Yep.
Right? And so having that clarity now of, again, it's that shift where it used to be go get a good job, go, get an education, do these things. It's how do we keep more money in the family to help do the things that the family wants to do.
Right.
We just did our first family retreat last year in Newport, California. It was awesome. And in that, we had some great conversations. There was great leadership. A lot of the siblings are starting to get closer and closer to their money as well, so it's really exciting. And then this year, we did just a large family vacation up to my grandma's farm in Iowa. And in that, we started to shift conversations. Because we've been saving so diligently, and because where we save does so much for us, we were able to realize that we can actually purchase our grandma's farm, keep that land, that legacy in the family, and create more from it. Right? And then it shifted that to not just like, how do we build investments, but how do we create the memories, the passions, the purposes, the things that we want to do as a family, and do so for generations. And like, it's one of those moments that you have to experience it to realize this is what we get to do as a family now. This was never in the cards 10, 15 years ago for us, but we've built that over time, right? And that's that time and consistency conversation. The habits that we started changing a decade ago are now turning into, there's some amazing opportunities in front of us, and we get to be the ones that jump on those now.
Yeah. And from the aspect of interdependence. Now, think about it from your grandma's standpoint. She can sell to the family. She'll have revenue, income for the rest of her life.
Right.
She knows who's going to be owning it into, perpetuity, right, forever. And she can start imagining, like the rest of her family, having the type of experience that you as a family had now for each and every year. And so think about, again, it's like something else. Until you've been put in a position to think about it, a lot of people would never even think about it. Kind of what you're saying. It's like, if you don't have any money, you don't notice all the good deals that go by. But as soon as you have a little bit of money, it's like, oh, there's a good deal. There's a good deal.
And they're everywhere. Everyone always needs money, right?
But when you don't have any money, or you don't have the ability to take advantage of it, you just don't see them. Or if you do see them, somebody else grabs them and they go, oh, that person got lucky. Right? But that's not luck. It's like when preparation meets opportunity. And what you've said over the last 10 years is you guys have been preparing. Yeah. And this idea of teaching people. And I think this is one of the keys, and we'll kind of maybe wrap it up to this, is like the idea of teaching people is like, I always say education is a process, not an event.
Yep.
And so the process of teaching people is something that I know you've got a huge passion for. You've taught other families. You've gone into their families, into their living rooms, and presented this whole idea. You've gone to boardrooms and presented this idea. Just real quick on a side note, you think about this from a business standpoint. If I'm owning a business, a manufacturing business, and I got, one of my kids is really good with maybe the accounting, one person's good at accounts receivables or sales, and somebody's good at managing the floor, or whatever it might be. And there's that kid that says, I don't get any of those. But what if you could take now that individual and say, hey, let's have you be the family banker.
Yeah.
Think about that. Now the true independence, where now all the kids are contributing, and then that one individual says, hey, I can step in and I'm going to be the family banker. I'm going to help run, I'm going to be the chief executive of the Fuller Family Bank or whatever it might be. There's a place for those people.
And in time, that could very well become a full-time position for one of the individuals, right?
Absolutely.
That you get paid a salary for managing your essentially book of business, your deals that come through.
Yeah.
And the coolest part about that, Wade, because we're lending money in these systems, right, that we've built up and sustained, it's so easy to track. Right, there's very little insurances that have to be in place because it's just money flowing from one party to the other. The interest is super easy to calculate. And so a lot of times it's one person tracking upwards like 150 deals on a single spreadsheet. And just making sure that they're like, you don't have to pay for any property and casualty insurance, no liability, none of that nonsense.
No inventory. Yeah.
And it's just purely great. Money comes in, money comes out, and we get to control how and when it does so.
And
That's
what rate and to whom?
place to be in the money game. And again, it's that long-term thinking, right? It takes time and consistency to get to that point. And that's why it's not an event, it's a journey,
Yeah.
right? Because when you're 10, 15 years in the system and you've done a couple deals, you've done a couple of what we'd say IBCing, using the infinite banking concept, now you start to realize, okay, what is our family really passionate about? What are the deals that we like so much that create the least amount of noise for us and the most profit that we just rinse and repeat the next 10 years?
Yeah.
And we do it bigger and better.
Yeah, and those opportunities are infinite. I mean, I've got clients that do it for, on their family farm or in their business, or maybe they do, just lend to the family. Their family's big enough, like the Fuller family. They got enough kids and grandkids, and you could just generate enough business for the family banking system right there. Or you're doing, hard money loans or whatever it might be. Right, access to cash will give you a ton of opportunities. And that's really all we're talking about.
Yep.
But running it as a family business is the part I think is foreign to people, kind of scares people a little bit. And I know, so this is going to go back to, what I've seen you do. Is like, you love having these conversations. You love getting together with families and helping people implement this idea.
Right.
So if anybody out there listening says, I want to know more, I just encourage you to reach out to Joe Fuller, set an appointment. Go to the Factum Financial website. Joe's listed on there. Click on there, schedule an appointment. Because, or just email them and just say, family banking, and that will rise to the top because I know that's a passion in you. If you saw somebody's tagline says family banking, you'd be all over it.
Oh, yeah. And the fun part, too, is we're starting to travel across a lot of the U.S. right now, teaching this to several big businesses and their employees and their individuals. And so feel free to, I would love to even do in-person conversations. We are stationed in Arizona, but I'm happy to travel and come stay, not necessarily in people's houses, but come teach you as a family, right? Because that's how we've done it as our family, to help start those conversations. And then the best part is you get to take it from there.
Yeah.
Right? We'll help guide and coach you all along the way. But once you start having these conversations, that vision and that purpose starts to get really clear really fast, and it becomes so fun.
Yeah. And the nice part about what you and Kyle especially have done is you put together a ton of documentation. You've put together templates to help people. And I think this is the part that most people are scared of because, hey, I'm going to hear this, but then what do I do next? It's like Clifford the Big Red Dog, and you probably don't even know who that is, but
I do.
I'm like, he's going to chase a car, and then one of the cartoons I love about it, he's standing there and says, "What's next?" He's got this car hanging from his mouth, right? He caught the car, but they didn't know what to do next. And I think where you bring some real value is that you know what to do next. And it's not just academically because you've read it in a book or you've seen somebody else do it. You've done it as a family. So you can bring your own experiences. Like, yeah, we tried that. And here's the good and the bad, the pros and cons, here's the pitfalls. And you can bring some family experience to the table. So I would encourage anybody that says, I truly want to be that person that's the top of the mantle, that everybody's going to point to and say, because of what Joe's done, what Joe did 20, 30, 50 years ago, we have what we have today.
Right.
And they're pointing to you because you're the one that was willing to get educated, and take some action. And taking action is what's going to make it happen.
Right. And I think that's such a powerful idea, is that it just takes one leader in the family have a better idea of how to do things. Right. And when that reality sets in, that a lot of times it's work that people aren't going to see for 5, 10, 15, 20 years even.
Yeah.
And then that one generation comes that they say, we are so incredibly blessed because of what you guys built for us. And we know that even more is going to come in the future as well. That's an amazing spot to be in that. Anyway, it's this is the journey of what a family bank starts to become. And then the ideas just start flowing. And then it's great. How can we do these things? Not if or we can't. It's how can we do that? What do we need to control to be able to do that? And then you work towards it.
Yes, a little time, money, and discipline.
Yep.
So, well, thanks again. It's Joe at Factum Financial, FACTUM Financial.com. If you want to know more, I need to say in the subject line, put in family banking. If nothing else, the documentation and the resources we have, we're more than willing to share that with anybody.
Absolutely.
That's asking. I mean, we are a family of abundance.
Right.
I believe in sharing everything we have because it's not my gift. It's God's gift that's being shared. So we want to share it with everybody. But, embrace the person that can take you down that journey. And again, I know you're going to be just 26, and I say just 26, but wisdom doesn't have an age on it. And so I think there's a lot of wisdom that you shared, either through your family's experience, your own experience, and really just this idea of where you're headed. And it is helping people find that freedom and that certainty that they want, and really that family interdependence, because that's the problem I see now is families scatter everywhere, and they don't, and geographically they can scatter. With technology, we can bring it back together. With this conversation, we can make it the interdependence that is so powerful. And that's the gift that we can bring people. That's truly the gift that I'm offering every listener out there is how do you bring your family together around money when the world has been telling us that that's how we separate families is through money.
So how do we, get people further away from their money and back in big banks and corporations' controls?
Yeah.
Let's bring it back.
They love people that don't want to have this conversation. Right.
They're going to make a lot of money off you.
So, well, Joe, thank you so much for your time and your vision. I appreciate you. We'll have you back on because this is a conversation that's just starting to grow. It's not ending at all. It's just starting to grow and it's still catching legs. So I'm excited to help you through this journey and down this pathway. I know it's part of my passion to help people become better at these conversations. And so, again, thank you so much for your time, and we'll talk to you soon.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Wade.
You bet.
Bye.
Thanks for joining me today. Remember, small shifts lead to lasting change. Keep thinking differently, keep moving forward, and we'll see you next time.